medical identity theft, that's a whole other kind of problem, and that can actually kill you. Because if somebody takes on your medical identity, next time you go back to the doctor, they may prescribe medication for you which conflicts with something else that you're taking, and that can create a whole other series of issues. But yeah, you're right, you're right. Unfortunately, the medical identity theft problem is probably in even worse shape than the financial identity theft
So
problem.
my question is, can they refuse service if you don't provide it?
Sure.
But
Why not?
The law doesn't protect that.
the thing is with the medical offices is because of the insurance.
Right.
Sometimes, most of the insurance, the only ID that they request to get an authorization, if you are a provider, a doctor, is your
Is your
social
Social
security.
Security.
My insurance has a specific ID number.
Yeah,
It's
what-
different from the Social
Yeah.
Security.
By the way, that only changed about two years ago.
Yeah.
Your medical identity number used to be your social security
Yeah,
number.
but there is some, for example, I don't know, the insurance for the Dade County, the vision insurance, I work for a vision provider, and there is the social security.
Yeah.
They don't have any car, they don't have any other member ID, they
All they
request
have is
your
social.
social security, your date of birth, and your name.
Yeah. The same three things
And
that
if
I
you
talked
are a
about.
dependent, they request the member, the provider, name, date of birth, and social security.
Right.
So we as a medical provider, we have all that information for every patient. Not only your information, but by the member, the provider. So if it's your spouse, your father, your mother, all the information.
One of the best ways to acquire the original data is actually insurance companies.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
But as I say, I'm doing my best to stay away from medical identity fraud here because that's a whole other problem that I.
But is there movement in insurance companies to move away from?
Not really.
To be honest with you, I don't think so.
My
Because
research-
we
my
have,
research doesn't
yeah,
show that.
there is one insurance that they just changed the website to get the authorization. And what they have there is either the last 4 digits of your social security with the last name, first name, and date of birth. But the easiest way is if you have the full social security. So that's why when they make the appointment, the receptionist, they ask for the social security of the provider. And when the patient say no, I don't want to do it, they say, you know what, we can do it when you're here if you give us the number, but if you're not eligible, if you have any problems, we're not going to be able to tell you until you come in. So the patient is forced to give that information and able to, to do the thing easy. So
One of the things we've observed in these discussions, the research discussions, is that one source of identity fraud is when one institution uses the identifier of another.
Right.
Social Security itself, the Social Security Administration, takes pretty good care of their numbers. It's just that everybody else uses their numbers for other purposes.
And by the way, the social security number was never ever intended to be an identity number. It was never intended that way. But over time, that's how it's being used. And part of the reason why it's so easy to get other information is that it wasn't created as a secure number.
yeah.
And so historically, the information is just available in all kinds of places.
And that insurance, the one for Dade County, you need to call. So every time you call, there's different person who answer the phone. So there is like 10 people working there that every time you call, you need to give all that information so
And
they have
that's
access to that
that's
information.
one insurer in one location.
Yeah.
I dare
It's
say
one
you
insurance.
have offices in every major county
Yeah.
probably
hmm
across the USA.
Yeah.
Here's a couple. This just gives you some examples of the kinds of publicly available records where your information is available. Phone books, voter registration lists, property tax records, warranty cards, social security death files. All of these are publicly available information. Marriage and divorce records, professional licenses. Until about 6 months ago, I was just talking to a pilot. Until about 6 months ago, pilots' licenses were publicly available information. It includes your name, your address, your date of birth, your social security number, and some other information about you as a professional pilot. And until about 6 months ago, that was publicly available information. Now, Those of us inside this room might not be aware of that, but trust me, the scammers know, and they know where to find it. Okay. Here's a couple of just example websites. Just enter your name. I don't necessarily do it now, but you know, sometime enter your name in there and just see what shows up. Or enter Google. Most of you have entered Google and see what shows up. There's another interesting website called Dogpile. I don't know if anybody has ever come across it. Dogpile.com. Try entering your name in there. It shows up a whole lot more than Google does. You've all heard or read about phishing, I presume? Dogpile. D-O-G-P-I-L-E. Sorry. Dogpile.com. D-O-G-P-I-L-E.com. Dogpile. Like the animal, the dog, cats and dogs. Dogpile. And it's not what it sounds like. Okay? It's not what it sounds like. It's actually a term that comes from the UK and Australia, where they play a lot of rugby. The dog pile, if you ever watch rugby or know anything about the game, the dog pile is when they all pile up on top of the ball, scrambling to get it. That's called a dog pile. So the idea is that you get information from a lot of different sources, focusing on the keyword to see what comes up with it. You've all heard of, presumably all seen or heard this term, phishing. There's even a cute advertisement on, I think it's in a bus or a train or something like that, where the guy sits down beside somebody and says, hey, I'm the Prince of Tasmania, and I have this lottery ticket, but I need some help getting it cashed. And then they say to you, you wouldn't respond to something like that, would you? And of course you wouldn't. Somebody sat down beside you and started giving you this line, you'd be very afraid and get the heck out of there and call the cops on the way. But that's exactly what happens with phishing. You get an email, says, my mother-in-law, and this is not to laugh at my mother-in-law, but to say that people are gullible. My mother-in-law is not unusually well off. She's, she lives independently, but she's not rich by any means. And, a $250,000 prize would do her really, really well. And she called me about 2 months ago and said, I'd like you to look at this because she knows that I'm professionally cynical. An auditor is a professional cynic. And the moment she even told me on the phone, I said to her, I don't need to see it, throw it away. It was written by some very official sounding Ministry of Housing and Homeowners. My Spanish is not very good, but essentially it was like the Ministry of Housing in Spain. And they were saying that you've won a lottery ticket. What we'd like to do is send you an advance, you cash it, and then we send you the rest of the money. The scam is, of course, that they send you the money, you send them back part of it as a fee, and you're using a cashier's check. So now the money is gone from your account. And about 15 days later, the $250,000 check that you deposited bounces. And of course the scammers are long gone. But you used your money to buy a bank check to pay the fee. So you're out that money.
Okay. So they're scamming you on the fee.
How much is
Yes,
the fee?
that's one scam.
The fee is how much?
The fee is maybe 10% or 5% of the amount of the winnings. So in her case it was $250,000. They were asking for a $2,500 fee. Anybody seen in the news recently? There's been like a rash of holdups in various pharmacies, CVS, Walgreens. Anybody notice that on the news? No, of course, because I'm a professional cynic and because I'm doing so much research on identity theft, I'm thinking that when these guys take what's in the money drawer, what's in there? Checks, credit card slips, if they're still using paper. Most pharmacies don't use paper anymore, it's electronic. But certainly checks are there. And those usually have a name and address. They won't have a social security number. But that's a great place to get this information, the acquisition. Hopefully the people who are, who are robbing these pharmacies are not that bright. But I don't know. These days I'm very cynical about identity theft.
So anyway,
Here's what I was just talking about, the ABCs of identity fraud: the acquisition, the breeding, and the conversion. Okay? I I think we kind of talked about that. Interestingly, the conversion, very often the conversion is done through some kind of money laundering scam. Does everybody know what money laundering is?
Explain.
Explain. Basically, you take money that comes from a dirty source, from prostitution, gambling, white slavery,
Narcotics.
narcotics, whatever it is. Dirty money,